Of course, those are the immortal words of Benson Winterford Payne from the movie, Major Payne. This is Tim's New York Giants Right Talk, powered by Online Big Blue LLC. With an opening like that, you have to understand it's gonna be a Daniel Jones video. I'm not sure if it's gonna be a Daniel Jones video more than it's gonna be a Bill Belichick video. I was kind of thinking about this, and it's been kind of like mulling over in my mind because I keep seeing people on social media pontificate about the fact that if by midseason, let's say, this team flames out, let's say by midseason this team is 1-8 or 1-7 because there's 17 games, so you really can't divide that by 2. But let's just say that's the case. Let's say they by midseason they have 1 win, and at that moment in time, the general manager, such as Joe Schoen, decides to move on from Brian Daboll. Things have just gone horribly wrong here. The Giants aren't much for firing coaches mid-season, so I mean, I really don't think that would happen. But for the sake of argument, let's say it did. And everything that I see, I keep seeing, well, it's going to be the Belichick. It's going to be the Belichick. It's going to be the Belichick. Don't be shocked if Bill Belichick comes in. I don't see it happening. Because there's a couple reasons. This to me would have to happen. These things would have to happen before Bill Belichick even came to the Giants. You would have to fire Brian Daboll. Then at the end of the season, you would have to fire Joe Schoen. Because I don't think Bill Belichick is going to come back to New York for technically his third stint, not as a head coach, but he had as a, being in the New York market as a defensive coordinator. So it'd be his third stint, in the New York City area. And I don't think he would want to come back and have someone over him. I think he would want to be president. I think he would want to be the GM, but he'd probably want to be, charge of football operations and the head coach. So you're going to have to give probably total autonomy to Bill Belichick. So that would mean you would have to get rid of Joe Schoen. I'm not going to cry for me, Argentina, if you do for that. Don't cry for me, Argentina. You are supposed to be immortal. But I'm not going to cry about that. But this is what you would have to do to get the likes of a Belichick. And then you would have to understand what you were getting. You are not getting the Giants defensive coordinator, Belichick. You're not getting the Cleveland Brown head coach, Bill Belichick. You are not even getting the New England Patriot coach, Bill Belichick. You are getting a gentleman who's at the end of his career, who's at the end of the line, who's got a team with minimal talent, no quarterback, salary cap issues, and a team that hasn't really won anything in years, really since 2011. So you're going to get the crotchety 70-year-old that's going to come in here, and you're going to have him reinvent the entire franchise. And that would probably mean from top to bottom. That would mean you would probably have to get rid of the likes of Tim Mara. We're not going to get rid of him because he's the owner's son, but you're going to have to get rid of the likes of Mara. You're going to have to get rid of the likes of Kevin Abram. Belichick would want to come in here. I can tell you right now, Belichick would want to come in here and clean house. Because if this is your last stint, if this is your last hurrah, why would you want to go in there with pieces that have been or have created a losing environment since 2011? So you would have to accept all that. Could you do that? Could the Giants do that? Could John Mara do that? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. But you would have to have the strength to do that. And as a fan base, you would have to have the strength one more time to go back into the rebuild of a rebuild of a rebuild. You're going to have to give them, like I said before, total autonomy. You're going to have to. You can't keep me cooped up in here, okay? I am a peacock. You got to let me fly. You got to let the peacock fly. You're going to have to give everything to Belichick. And we're already going to have Daniel Jones back in 2025, no matter what. All the misinformation that you're seeing about the salary cap, about all this money we have in salary cap space. Yeah, these are also the same people that aren't factoring in the $25 million really that comes right off that cap, the $22 million in dead cap space, the other $3 million off the exempt list, and a whole other bunch of money. So you got to think, and this is what's aggravating me about these people, because they're all like, we got all this money. There's only a couple sports writers out there that are actually very astute about it, because a couple of them say, listen, you don't have all this money, but you have more room to operate, and honestly, you're going to be pushing more of that money into 2025. And I think those were some, I can't remember who said it, but that was a very astute article I just read about the Giants cap space. But you have to remember, you are going to have to take the salary cap right now and just take $25 million right off the top. Just literally right off the top, just take $25 million. I'm actually vamping because I'm trying to get my numbers pulled up, but the numbers aren't working. Right now, the Giants have over $285 million in cap liability right now. And if you take a look at the top 51, you go through the rule of 51. You got to remember, we've talked about the rule of 51, I think, ad nauseum, because that's what people, they don't understand. You have to go with the cap space that you have now, not with the cap space you're going to have later. So if you take a look at it, you're going to have over $22 million in dead cap numbers, another almost $4 million on the reserve list. So if you have, just for the sake of argument, NFL salary cap is 255. You rolled over $2 million. So, and I believe there was another adjustment on there for like $2 million. So you have $260 million in cap space. With the contracts we have right now, with the rule of 51, before the Andrew Thomas restructure, active contracts would be $261 million. You have to remember then the exempt list. You have to then remember the injured reserve list. You also have to remember the dead cap space list. That's almost $26 million. So you would already be $1.3 million over, and then you're going to have to minus an additional $26 million. Which gives you negative about $28 million in cap space. So I love it. Someone sent me something from Chat Sports, and I couldn't even look at it because the guy's a fucking moron. And not because because he tried to get stupid with me on Twitter, but he's just a fucking moron. Because they just make shit up. The Giants are going to sign Johnny Unitas. I don't have tolerance for people that are stupid, and I don't have tolerance for people that just want to make themselves look good by turning around and lying. And that's what Chat Sports does. If you want my honest opinion. So you're going to have to deal with the outcome of having Daniel Jones in 2025. You're going to deal with the outcome of having a coach like Bill Belichick with his pedigree come in here and have to make total changes. I think the fan base would be up for that, but I think the ownership would be like,
that's great. That's just fucking great, man. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty shit now, man.
And Hudson's right. We're being some pretty shit because we're going to have to take another step back. And you're going to have to look at drafting a quarterback in 2025. And Bill Belichick, outside of the wonderment of Tom Brady, his next quarterback that he chose was Mac Jones. So he's technically 1 for 1. And honestly, I think it was more back then, which was early on when they got Tom Brady. Belichick wasn't really totally involved in the decision-making processes in reference to drafting. They had a full-time general manager. So he wasn't even really the one that brought in Tom Brady. It's like the whole, I'm not even getting the Brian Dable, Josh Allen thing. Because yes, Brian Dable did work with Josh Allen, but also Brian Dable got Josh Allen. In other words, they handed him Josh Allen. They handed him someone with all-world talent. We handed him Daniel Jones, and I got to admit, he took the hamburger and turned it into ground meat. He didn't make it into a hamburger patty. He just made it into ground meat, which was worth 3,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. That's not going to cut it in New York. And I think if you are going to have this epiphany or this moment that you're going to bring in someone like Belichick, you're going to have to be willing and have the complete wherewithal and understanding that he is going to want to do everything his way because it's going to be his last hurrah. And last hurrahs barely ever work out. For every Dick Vermeil who took 11 years off, you're going to have the likes of a Hank Stram. You know, Hank Stram with one of our famous sound bites about matriculating the ball down the field when he was the Kansas City Chief head coach, you know, and he brought the Kansas City Chiefs winning that Super Bowl. People forget he then went over to years later. He then went over to the Saints, and it was horrid. It was terrible. The Saints were even worse with that type of head coach. It's the same thing. Like, you know, you have Mike Ditka, Bears head coach, 85 Bears. What happened? He flames out in Chicago, turns around, goes to New Orleans. Again, it's New Orleans. Maybe it's the city. And it doesn't work out. So there always is that term of retreads. And I'm not calling Bill Belichick a retread because of the fact that he has probably one of the most amazing pedigrees and resumes that is out there. But at the end of the day, he would technically be an older retread. So you're going to have to remember, for every time, like I said, you get a Dick Vermeil, you get 3 or 4 other guys that suck even worse. And it just usually, reunions usually just don't work out. And I think that's why a lot of times Bill Parcells never came back to New York, never came back to the Giants, because why do you want to tarnish your legacy in the city that made you a football god? Yeah, you got to a Super Bowl with the Patriots, but you didn't do much with Dallas. You didn't really, you didn't, you know what I mean? You won, but you didn't win with the Jets. You didn't make it to the Super Bowl. You didn't win a Super Bowl. So coming back to the city that made you, you know, for your 2 championships, I think later in his career, he understood. I think that's why he went to Miami and became, the president of football operations or whatever his title was at that point in time. I think that's why he went to Miami and didn't want to come to New York, because you don't want to tarnish your legacy. But I think Bill Belichick is just one of those guys. I think he's having fun now, but you know, when that season starts, he's going to get the itch.
That's what she said.
And the only thing you could scratch it with,
that's what she said,
is going to be the football. Daniel Jones has already been a coach killer. Killed the career of Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, and now potentially he's going to kill the career of Brian Dable. So, and like I said, you're going to be stuck with him over 2000. Don't listen to anybody else. You're going to be stuck with him in 2025. Book it, write it down, because people just don't get it. I think we might have a live stream one day this week. Definitely we're going to have Sunday Giants, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And as always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to ring that bell because you want to know why. That'd be awesome.